All change. This train not taking passengers.
Hey everyone. Oh, this is nice. I did something big about a month ago, maybe a month. About a month. I got a mate of mine who's getting married, and I'm on his bridal party. And we're at Chatty, the shops, just trying suits on and things like that. And while we were there, we went to JB for some reason, come on what we're looking for. I said, you know what? I think it's time I'm buying a set of headphones. I've got a pair that I use at home, and I've had these headphones for over 10 years. They were given to me by someone. And they were a good set. They were these Pioneer DJ spec sort of headphones, like, over 10 years ago. And I've changed, those rubber pads, the rubber ear pads like that, go on the muffs. I've changed them over twice. When the old ones get dried out, cracked, and they chip, they flake. I've changed them twice. That's how old they are. And I'd realised when I'd done the last round of voiceovers for someone, I was using those headphones and I couldn't hear my own voice. Like, they sounded really tinny. I got frustrated. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, these are broken as well. Like, they're so uncomfortable to use. I got to get rid of them. So I did. I've still got them. But I just said, no, I got to buy some headphones. So, I was at JB and I'm like, you know what? I've done enough voiceover jobs to justify buying a $100 pair of headphones. Like, this is ridiculous. So, I treated myself and bought a new pair. They're the same ones that I have at the studio in where we do the podcast. And this is the first time I'm actually using them for, like, something. So it's nice. I've got part 2 of the last episode that I've put up about. I'd spoken to Gwyneth and George about the occult. Part 2 is still sitting on the can. Like, I've got to get it edited. It's just had a lot of work on. It's crazy. And I'd been meaning to do a solo one for ages, and I just kept putting it off just because I've been too busy. And it's weird. Things come up, and I get amped or angry. And it's like, I've got to put this down, because I'm sick of repeating myself. Look, maybe I've already mentioned this before. I don't know. I use a lot of these solo pod episodes just as a stream of conscious sort of thought. I can't remember when it started. I think they sort of started in 2017, maybe after Johnny first jumped off. I can't remember. But I started doing solo drops. I should go back and see when the first one was. Anyway, and the way they work is, I got really bad at note-taking for these sort of things, because I always lose them. I used to write articles back in the day, back when I was 18, probably through to my mid to late 20s, mid-20s probably. I used to write like little mini rants, editorials, all that sort of stuff on anything. It was just stories, personal opinion, op-ed sort of shit. Of course, it didn't mean anything then. It wouldn't mean anything now. Like, these don't mean anything now, but it was a good way to just channel my energy and get my thoughts out and all that sort of stuff. And I used to be meticulous with note taking. The ironic thing now is that I've got nothing but multimedia around me, like 3 phones at all times, a tablet, a phone, a laptop. And I can never take notes. I can never find anything to take notes on or with. The problem is that, people ask me for my opinion. I get into conversations with people, and sometimes something will happen, like a world event or whatever. And I get tired of repeating myself every time someone brings up the same conversation. And so a lot of the times I'll just forward them a link to the Spotify thing and say, here's what I think on that. I can't, especially if it's something that's half controversial or, is definitely going to go back and forth. And sometimes I'll just say to someone here, listen to this, then come back to me with your thoughts. And not because I'm an authority or anything, just because I can't be bothered repeating myself. Yeah, some of the stuff people choose to argue about is really droll. But then you're talking to a guy that does a podcast with two other idiots, and we debate cold cuts or straight, deserted island reading material. Anyway, apologies for my voice as well. We just had the Bucks for that said wedding over the weekend, and I didn't actually stop working, so I was working every day. And in between work, I was running a Bucks for a mate. It brought a lot of things into perspective. It's so weird. Like, one thing we did was go to we went to a club, and it's the first time I've been to a nightclub, like not a bar, not a speakeasy sort of drinking session, all that sort of thing that you typically do when you're approaching 40. But a club, and it's a club that I'd been to back like 20 years ago. I remember having a mate's, 21st there. And, yeah, put a lot of different things into perspective. It's so weird. Because, on one hand, most of us there, not most of us there, all of us, all the people in attendance at the Bucks, were between the ages, like, say, 32 and 42. That's a safe sort of bet. And it's weird going to a club now and you're in your late 30s. You have money. Yeah, you probably have a bit more expendable money to buy yourself a drink or whatever and catch an Uber home than you did when you were 18. But then I remember when I was 18, I was working casual job, cleaning, and I had youth allowance. I didn't have the overheads and expenses that I have now. But it seemed like every 2 weeks, at least, I was going out and getting absolutely munted. And I could drink like a machine back then, But yeah, it was strange being in this club that I'd been in, 20 years ago. And I remember getting amped up because I could hear the same tunes that I was listening to 20 years ago in clubs that were getting played on Saturday. I'm like, what the hell? I specifically remember sitting there and I was just working my way through a drink and I just heard I'm like, that's in the club, man. I was at the end of high school when that got leaked. I was literally at the end of high school when In the Club got leaked. And it was firing off. And all these kids. That's the other thing, these kids. They look like they were 18, 19, 20, young. And they were losing it over 50 Cent, DMX, Biggie. All these tunes that came out from 95 up until 2005. It's really, really bizarre. It's like that Fat Man Scoop song. That came out in the early 90s, mid-90s or whatever it was. And I was listening to it in 2005. Now they're listening to it in 2022. It's clubbing, it's a different experience. A lot of posing. I don't remember doing a lot of posing. I think it's because of the smartphones. Oh, that was the other thing. I remember being on the dance floor, and most of my mates had veered off to go have a dart. So that a lot of them were outside for a lot of the night. Half of them were in this booth that we'd gotten. So I was on the dance floor most of the night. And I remember looking next to me, and there were these group of girls, probably mid-20s or something. And one was filming the other one twerk for 4 seconds. I'm assuming it was for a TikTok or an Instagram loop or something. But the thing that got me was that she filmed her, handed her the phone, her friends looked at it, rubbished it, and said, go again. And they did this for over a 2-minute period. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to go viral with your one twerk video on Instagram. It was so annoying. It was annoying. I don't know. I don't remember doing that 20 years ago because, smartphones weren't around. We definitely weren't taking photos like that. I remember just going to clubs and getting blind from the minute I walked in. I don't know. With the booth that we'd organised, we'd gotten guest list. It was also almost impossible to organise a guest list for. There was about 19 guys, 15 to 20 guys. Let's just say that, and we spent 2-3 weeks calling every venue in Melbourne that had bottle service and booths and all that sort of stuff that would accommodate for 20 guys. You couldn't do it. They wouldn't accept it. It's and we were hitting them with we'll pay whatever it costs. Just, we want a booth, we want guaranteed entry. We're celebrating something and, we'll pay whatever the tab is. We're happy to pay for booze and la la la. Sorry, we can't help you. And it struck me what do you mean? You don't want our service. But at the same time, 20 women would get into a club in a heartbeat and not necessarily pay for anything besides entry. I don't understand how, especially post-COVID, how you could have the luxury of saying, no, we don't need the business of, $2 to $3 grand guaranteed. We don't need it. That would cover your DJ and most of your floor staff for the night. But yeah, it was an absolute nightmare to do it. And then I took point on the night. Yeah, myself and the best man were we were holding all the cards and the keys for everyone. So I took point and said, all right, I'll go sort out the door, make sure everyone gets in. And the woman at the front door was like, are you on this list? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what's the list? And I said, well, it's so-and-so's, gig thing. I said, okay, so what's your name? I said, well, I'm Demetrios. There's no Demetrios here. I'm like, impossible. Actually, every time I say the word impossible, I always think of Squeak Scolari from basketball when he's at the game and he's looking at that drag queen or trans woman in the crowd that was at the bar. It's clearly a dude with a blonde wig. And then Reem tells him, no, that's a guy. It's impossible. Yeah. I said, literally, my name's Demetrios. Well, there's no Demetrios here. I said, that's impossible. It's give me the list. I took the list off her. I'm well, Tim is right there. Clearly. Seriously? Okay. That's fine. Right? And so I got past that hurdle. And then when I went inside, I was trying to find a way to the booth because I didn't know which booth was ours or whatever. So I've said to, I found someone, security or something, and I said, hey, okay, where's the booth for, Tom's birthday? And the guy's like, there's no Tom's birthday booth here. I'm like, what do you mean? Because there's only a Thomas. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes. Are we all on this kick? It's a nightclub, man. You have to bring 100 points of ID, a vial of semen, lineage reports dating back to the 15th century. Yes, I am Welsh. Oh my God, it's a nightclub, man. Seriously. And then the booking itself, man, they were screening people. They wanted social media profiles of minimum 50% of the group so they could pre-screen the individuals going in. What do you look at? I laughed. I said, yeah, go ahead. So given as I don't have a Facebook account, I go, sure. Okay. Give him my cooking page. Give him my podcast page. Give him 2 of my business accounts. You'll never get me. Who's turning up? The good, the bad, or the fucking horrific? Oh, God. So what was that? My God. I don't know. The other thing is I bought a drink and I cut my lip on the glass. There was a crack in the top of the glass, and I didn't notice it until I actually took a sip, and it cut my whole friggin' lip. And it looks like I've got herpes from space or something now. It's blown up a bit. I gave the glass back to the woman behind the counter, and she sort of looked at it, then looked at me, and then just put the glass to the side. Like, I didn't see her physically throw it out into a bin. It's like, dude, throw it out. Is it there to be assessed? They're going to reuse it and just chance it that no one else complains? The amount of money these clubs would make at the bar, it's disgusting. Because they're not serving good shit. They're serving diluted crap. And you're paying a mint. I'm looking at my charges on my credit card and bank transfers that I did throughout the night, and it's actually disgusting. Yeah, sure, it's a night out for bucks or whatever, but still. Anyway, it was all worth it to feel like crap the next day. But here's the thing. I was poo-pooing my efforts because I was, in the older echelon of the group. But I was one of the last men standing, to the point where I must have snapshotted it by accident when I was trying to close my phone, like on that night. I woke up and I found a pack of smokes, pack of Reds in my bathroom on the bench. And someone said to me, "Who'd you steal them from?" I said, and I checked my phone, and there's actually a credit card, purchase at a 7-Eleven that night. So I clearly walked into a 7-Eleven, bought a pack of darts. I don't smoke, but I've got a pack of darts with one or two missing. And the snapshot, was of a scooter usage in the city at 5:45 in the morning. So you know what? I think for someone who's at the tail end of a long and storied career of binge drinking and clubbing, I think to pull that off in being in the worst shape that I've ever been in my entire life, I think I did well. Yeah, I can I can brag about that on the internet for 2 seconds. Why not? Anywho, I went to a gig. Something I've done a bit since in 2022 is I've gone to a couple gigs that I normally probably wouldn't have gone to as many the other years, and then definitely not through COVID. But I went and saw Kiss, and I went and saw Tech9 is a rapper. I'd seen him before, like 5-6 years ago, something like that. And the last time I saw him, was playing at Billboards in the city, which is like a decent club size sort of venue. This time around, it was like an RSL-ish sort of venue in Thornbury, Northcote. And it was like this rapper is like one of the top 20 earners, pre-2015 or something. Icon. And he's playing at the RSL. It was a weird vibe. And before we went in and went to the bar, and they wanted, $15 or whatever for a beer. I remember looking at them, the boy, was it about 4 or 5? It was 4 of us? I think it was 4 of us. And we looked at each other and said, well, fuck this. There's a bottle just across the road. So we went to the bottle shop, bought like a 6-pack or 4-pack of something, and then like a flask or something else. And I bought a bunch of pork rinds and jerky and chips. Went to the car park and just squatted underneath the street light like we was 17. It was mad. We had good vibes. But I remember even there, with the thing with the phones that night, I actually wrote this one down because I didn't want to forget it. There was a guy standing next to me, and it was such a weird crowd too, man. There was an overwhelming stench of like body odor, stale cigarettes, and human feces. It was such a potpourri. It killed me. Absolutely killed me. Like, you couldn't even take a deep breath just to, if you were vibing the thing. I don't know. Anyway, the reason why I remember this guy that was standing next to me, he literally stood motionless for a good hour, mouth like half a jar, just staring. Just staring. And I still remember his hair. It sort of looked like something you'd seen, like Beavis and Butthead, of like an older stoner in high school or something. Like, it had grown out, but it's not like he'd cut it with any style like beforehand. So it was just long hair that's grown out. And he was just staring like comatose. And then at one point, I sensed him moving, and he had taken a video of like something on stage, like, some part of the performance or whatever. And I was watching him struggle to get it, like, I'm assuming he was trying to upload it. He filmed like, 10, 20 seconds of the performance, and he missed like 3 songs that were being performed because he was trying to figure out how to upload the video. I almost like wanted to grab the phone off him and say, "Hey man, like, do you want me to do it?" But I did. Yeah, it was part of that potpourri sort of thing. So I didn't have my what's it called, rubber gloves. Yeah, I know, that made me laugh. I thought it was funny. I'm sure there's more crap that I wanted to talk about. I don't actually remember. There's only 2 things that I actually do remember I want to talk about. The 2 things that I'd actually wanted to speak about, one of them I remembered, I'd put this down ages ago, was the Qatar situation, or Qatar, or however you want to pronounce it, depending on where you are in the world. But that country over in the Middle East, where they're having the World Cup right now of European football, or soccer as some people know it. I can't believe the national team's called the Socceroos. It's I don't know, it's so limp-wristed. Anyway, I think it's hilarious that people are outcrying right now in regards to what's going on over there. And it all started with the human rights thing, how teams are reprimanded from wearing, the rainbow-coloured bands, or having a little "We Care, One Love" emblem stitched on their shirts and all that sort of stuff. And, I'm in 2 minds about the whole using sports as a political platform. I know John in the past has said that politics should stay out of sports. I'm in the mind of, obviously depending on what the issue is and the sincerity of the act, I think sports stars and individuals have a platform that's unparalleled, especially in 2022. And so using it to shed light onto situations which most people may not be, which may not be common knowledge or whatever, I think isn't a bad thing. If you think about the 60s, I think it was 68, 72, 68, somewhere there. I'm pretty sure it was the 60s. The Olympics, the one where the names Peter Norman was the Aussie guy. I remember that. Where you had, hang on, wait, let me look this up. Oh yeah, Tommy Smith and John Carlos. They were 2 African American athletes. It was 68 in Mexico, and it was the hang on, the 200-meter race in 68. That's one of the most famous sporting and political moments in recorded history, modern recorded history, where Tommy Smith and John Carlos came first and third, and Peter Norman ran second. As the flags were raised, they raised their fists, as in the form of like a Black Power salute, like a Black Panther salute. Sorry, representing Black Power, and later on, like I remember, hang on. If you read, actually, I've read about this extensively because I think it's a really important moment. It's a really powerful moment, especially the story after the post story of that thing. But, Smith said that it was the gesture itself was not a Black Power salute per se, but more a human rights salute. And the demonstration is regarded as one of the most overtly political statements in the history of modern Olympics. The reason why it really bothered me, why I've read a lot about it, is because Peter Norman, the Aussie, he actually set records for Australia. But because of his involvement in that event, he's the one that suggested that they share their gloves. One guy, because one of the guys had forgotten his gloves, and Peter Norman suggested that they wear one each. And Peter Norman wasn't participating. He was actually wearing, all three of them were wearing Olympic Project for Human Rights badges, because Peter Norman was a critic of Australia's white-only policy, which had only been disbanded not that long before, I'm talking like a decade, like it's still in the memory. Anyway, so what happened was after the Olympics themselves, they all got shit-canned. Yeah, so Smith and Carlos were suspended from the team. They were banned from Olympic Village. They weren't forced to return their medals, but they were suspended. And they were largely ostracized from everything. Peter Norman copped it, man. Like, he came back to Australia and he was just reprimanded. Like, he's criticised and conservatives in the media. He didn't go to the 72 Olympics because of his, even though he qualified. Yeah. He wasn't invited to participate in the 2000 Olympics, like the opening ceremony. It was a joke. And the Americans actually invited him to Sydney to take part in the celebrations when they heard that Australia wasn't even inviting him down. Anyway, he died. He passed away in 2006. And both Smith and Carlos, the African-American runners, they were pallbearers at his funeral. And in 2012, the House of Representatives here actually officially apologized and recognized the role he had. But at the time was treated like a villain. Anyway, what makes me laugh is the fact that Qatar, they've landed the FIFA World Cup in a country where, A, the conditions themselves aren't fit for sport of any kind, really, on a national level like this. And not necessarily fit for sport, but not fit for athletes that are acclimatized to other conditions. See, all the European players are coming from winter where it's getting cold, it's snowing in most countries, or some countries, and they're forced to play in conditions that, you're waking up and you're facing 30-degree days. Gets to like top of 50 there during summer. Normally the games would be played in summertime, so they moved it to winter. But this is the thing. They cracked the SADs because the Qataris, in a last-minute call, decided to ban the sale of alcohol in their venues. So you got all these English football firms and, South Americans and whatever going to this, country where the sale of booze isn't allowed. Who watches sport without alcohol? It doesn't happen. To the point where Budweiser was going to try and sue them because they've got a warehouse now full of booze that they can't touch. They're an official sponsor. Like, how bad does it look? Your official sponsor of the games can't actually sell their own product in the competition, within the competitive grounds. But that's not even the kicker. The stink is that Qatar's got a terrible human rights track record. Terrible. And, gay tourists and soccer fans were warned to keep their PDA levels down to a minimum at risk of getting reprimanded in the streets. It's like, well, you gave the Qataris the World Cup. What did you expect? Like a turn of cheek? Like, oh, we're all accepting now. No. You got horrendous human rights records, man, like for equality, gender, sexuality, all that sort of thing. And they're acting surprised. And, oh my God, is this really happening? Like, dude, have you seen what Saudi Arabia has been doing for the last 50 years? I love it. It's that arrogant swagger of like the Christian missionaries or the Mormons, that go into uncivilized tribes and then come out either eaten or sacrificed to a higher power. Like they think that they just get like that idiot. What was the name of that absolute moron who went to those islands off the coast of India somewhere where they're officially designated as no-go zones because they're indigenous tribes there that have been untouched and uncontacted by modern civilization. And the few times that they've tried to broker like, some form of relationship with them or just even interaction, they've been attacked, aggressively. They've been shown antagonism and they haven't bothered. And that moron, I'm pretty sure it was a Mormon missionary or something. He was going to go there and spread the word of the good Lord. And they ended up killing him on sight and burying him in the sand. It's just the arrogance, the absolute arrogance and ignorance of the situation. And speaking of civil rights being abused, that was the other thing during the weekend. The grand old election. Oh, Jesus Christ. I completely forgot about it. I voted early on Thursday or Wednesday or something. I can't remember what it was. I voted early because I knew Saturday I'd be tied up or wouldn't have a chance to go vote. And I completely forgot about it. And in the lead up, I actually caught up with a bunch of different people over the Thursday, the Friday, and the Saturday. I had coffee with a couple of friends I hadn't seen in ages. I ran into a few people in the city that I hadn't seen in ages. And I basically got the premise of, from these individuals that if Dan Andrews gets back in, we're all fucked. I got a lot of, I'm leaving the state, basically repeating the same shit that I'd heard back in 2020. If the mandates didn't lift or the lockdowns didn't lift, they were going to move. All of people are still here in Victoria, haven't gone anywhere. But nevertheless, I just kept my mouth shut. I said, look, man, I think people are going to be unpleasantly surprised because Dan Andrews has got a base and, the base itself is freaking deep, landslide victory like 2018. Like he's up until the mandates and the lockdown laws and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, he had his critics, but he's been universally held. He's the longest reigning Victorian Premier for a reason. Anyway, so I just sort of started padding it out. I didn't argue with him on the man's politics or anything. I just said, look, man, I think you're going to be surprised. I didn't think he would hold on to power, but I thought he would definitely be surprised. Anyway, it gets to Saturday, and we're all getting smashed, gearing up for the night out. And someone said, fuck, I think Labor's won. I went, really? So I checked out the news as, Dan Andrews projected victory, blah, 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 blah. Matthew Guy to resign, like unsure of resignation, that sort of thing. I just laughed. I was like, okay. So he's still in. Anyway, I woke up to the aftermath like the next day. And it's amazing, but I'd never seen so many. And I shared something on social media, okay, about. I actually like this. Hang on a second, let me see this. Let's have a look here. What I shared on social media was a Batuta Advocate post. Now, Batuta Advocate are a satirical Instagram account, and they take the piss out of everything, okay? And they're not left or right. They're dead set center. When you do satire, you have to be, centrist, basically, because you've got to be able to take the piss out of both sides. And they put up a post, and it's a picture of Dan Andrews, and next to nothing but headlines from the last 2 years of Dan Andrews. So, Toxic Dan, Urban Rail Dope, Suburban Urban Rail Dope, Vic Bitter, Ain't No Sunshine, Lockdown Hits Home, House of Cards, just all this negative Andrews headline stuff, right? And the Batuta Advocate article just starts, it's all over Rupert, obviously levelling at Rupert Murdoch, who owns Herald Sun and Fox News and all that sort of stuff. So the article basically just comes off and says, despite the fact that the rest of the country doesn't really give a fuck about Victorian state politics, you have to admit that the election results over the weekend was pretty hilarious. Coming off the back of a 218 landslide win, 3 years of bushfires, lockdowns and relentless criticism, Victorian Premier Dan Andrews has proven that old media is dead. So this comes after an entire term of non-stop front-page character assassinations leveled towards him by the Australian and the Herald Sun, two Murdoch-owned propaganda rags that would have you believing that Andrews was not going to win a single seat because he's a crooked Chinese-owned reptile who everyone hates. So brazen was the Sky News and News Corp assault on Andrews that the entire Murdoch stable have just shown the world how irrelevant and out of touch they are. This was made clear at the ballot as the voters clarified that their own political views are the complete opposite of the media class who spent 3 years stoking conspiracies and making fun of a 50-year-old man for breaking his back after working 200 days straight. Anyway, the article goes on to say a bit more. And like I said, it's all satire as well, but they invariably always have a bit of truth in there. And what they said wasn't wrong. And it's exactly what I was repeating to all the people that I spoke to. Everyone was making it out as if Dan Andrews was going to get tried, hung, and drawn and quartered because of what he did to them and the pain that he's put them all through and all that sort of stuff. And I said, guys, it's not like that. The problem is we live in an echo chamber, and so many people hear that their opinions just get spat back at them, and that's what happened. I got a friend, friend, quote unquote, however you want to do it, and they put up a post right after the elections, and it said, "Selected, not elected, not my premier." He'd already been something about fraud. And I just went, So I put up this thing on the Batuta, and they messaged me straight away. And I'm so used to getting texts like this, all the time now. Every time I put something up that criticizes anything to do with their, what's it called? Their beliefs, whether it's political, religious, whatever, I get a message straight away. So she's replied to my story, and she said, "It was a rigged election. No one I know voted Labor. He's an evil pedophile." Right. So I responded and said, number one, the irony of a devout Pentecostal accusing someone of being a pedophile. Okay, let's not even open that one. And she responded with, "He is, just because you don't know he is." I'm like, okay. And I said, two, no one you know. So I guess that seals it. I didn't realise that you and your social network represent the greater population of Victorians who voted. And the fact of the matter is that you live in Sydney. So what people overlook is that before the restrictions, Andrews had an unfettered following. The lockdowns is the only thing that divided anyone for the first time, breaking ranks within the Labor Party and of the Labor Party within a WOG community. A big base of who you and, as in myself and this friend of mine, are typically part of. So the echo chamber of WOGs, especially, who are, religiously Labor voters for years. But they would, the lockdowns, depending who you were, really sort of struck a chord. So, and then I added, not only have charges of abuse have never ever been presented or levied against Andrews, which I think would be something they could bring up considering the slander campaign that they'd run. Charges have been brought forward to top-reaching members of your specific church, being the Pentecostals, Hillsong and all that sort of stuff. But I don't see you backing out of your religion or promoting any of that or bringing it to light. I have, because every time I have, she's commented. And she said, the only thing, I have to laugh at that. I'm like, what do you mean? And I said, forget the fact that child abuse runs rampant historically in religious institutions. And I said, I laugh every day. I go, you should do it more often and keep the insanity of organized religion at bay. Like, seriously. Just amazing. Like, it's only with the far right. Every time they lose an election of some kind, it's fraud. It's a scam. It's fraud. It's fake news. Like, all the usual shit keeps coming out. If they won the election, it was fair and square. There's no evidence of election fraud. There's no evidence that Dan Andrews is a pedophile, but no, he is, as if she was the person molested. That's how sure she is. It shits me. And that's the thing with Dan Andrews. I mean, personally, you look at my situation and why I would vote against him. Well, I think the knee-jerk reaction and overcompensation of, all the COVID payouts speak for themselves. You had people on JobSeeker getting twice what they were normally getting just because. I didn't get into JobSeeker. One of my businesses was directly affected to it where it ground my income to zero. I was still handling all the overheads. But because I wasn't homeless, a drug dependent, a Torres Strait Islander, or a degenerate, generationally unemployed individual, I got nothing. When the lockdowns came, I was a single guy living alone whose personal business had stopped, cold, and all of a sudden, I got no help, nothing. Ran up all my debt, lost all my savings. Just is what it is. I could easily complain, and I didn't. And it's these fashionably religious people or people who just get these conflicting political ideologies that really have no idea what they're supporting. They just think that they know better. Anyway, well, the people have spoken. Of course, it's funny. Yeah, Dan Andrews is not her premier. Well, he's not. She lives in Sydney. And you know what? The thing that really pisses me off is that this individual, the one I'm actually referring to, I've invited onto my podcast many times to discuss anything. Open forum. She can give me a list of no-go zones, everything. I've invited them on so often. They will use their platform and to spew the same echo chamber bullshit to the few people that they have, however many followers they have. And she'll be the first person to attack me, completely ungrounded in my DMs. But when I invite her to a public platform to actually discuss shit, it goes cold. Goes quiet, doesn't respond to shit. Now, why is that? One time, I've probably mentioned this as well. One time in the past, she said, because people are too judgmental, and once you put something out there, it's there forever. And I said, well, the irony of that is that I guess I have more faith in my opinion than you do, given we're going to discuss religion. If someone has more information on something, please, by all means, educate me. But if you're going to come out with baseless shit like Dan Andrews is a pedophile and this election was fixed, okay, prove it. I'm waiting for the proof. I'm not saying Dan Andrews can't be a pedophile. Of course he can. But as far as I know, he isn't. But there's ironclad proof out there floating around on the dark web. The same way the Queen's a reptilian and we live on a flat earth. And Jesus will come. Smoke crack.
Hold up.